Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is literally flooding everyone's social media feeds right now. You know those videos, right? The whole get rich quick, make thousands from your laptop pitch, all built around Amazon FBA retail arbitrage. I mean, the pitch sounds incredibly easy. You just stroll into a big box store like Costco, scoop up discounted stuff, and flip it for a massive profit on Amazon. But as we looked into the sources, we found a highly dangerous, honestly, kind of hidden underside to this whole business model. We're going to break down exactly what we're calling the Costco retail arbitrage death trap. So, to really wrap our heads around how this trap actually works, let's look at a totally hypothetical scenario. Let's call our stickman character here Steve. Now, Steve gets totally lured in by these flashy online gurus. They're showing him how to use fulfillment by Amazon, FBA. The promise is super simple. Steve just needs to find cheap items at wholesale stores, ship them off, and let Amazon do all the heavy lifting while he, sips margaritas on a beach. But is Amazon FBA arbitrage really worth it? Well, let's follow Steve as he makes his very first deal. Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is exactly the euphoric math that gets people completely hooked. So Steve walks into his local Costco, right? And he spots a product. Maybe it's some limited edition snack or a trendy beauty product, sitting there on the shelf for just $9. He pulls out his phone, scans the barcode with his Amazon seller app, and his jaw just drops. No way! That exact same item is selling for $26 on Amazon. The math looks absolutely unbelievable. Steve immediately whips out his credit card, totally blinded by the potential payday. Now, just look at the illusion this creates. $17. Steve is literally looking at a massive $17 profit margin on every single item. He's thinking, hey, if I buy 100 of these, that's $1,700 in my pocket for, a few hours of work? It sounds like literally the easiest money in the world. He's probably already dreaming about what color sports car he's going to buy. But hold on a second, because this is exactly where the trap springs shut. Here is the massive record scratch reality check directly from our source material. When analyzing a guru's breakdown of this exact 9 to 26 flip, the source points out a crucial and honestly often ignored detail. Quote, he didn't say you make 17, he said you made 4. Yeah, you heard that right. That massive $17 margin, it's completely an illusion. The actual real profit is just a tiny fraction of that. Let's systematically break down why. Step by step. So Amazon, they're going to take their cut. You sell the item for $26. But since you're using FBA, Amazon has to pick and pack that item in their warehouse. That's a fee. Then Amazon takes a referral fee just for letting you sell on their massive platform. Then there's a closing fee. By the time you subtract the original $9 cost of the item, plus the shipping to get it to the Amazon warehouse, plus all these logistical FBA fees, Steve is left with a measly $4 in true profit. Yeah, our animated stickman isn't looking quite so pumped anymore. Moving on to the next part, the ultimate danger, operating capital and bulk pallets. So here's the thing. To make any real life-changing money on a tiny $4 margin, Steve can't just buy a handful of items. He has to buy literally pallets of them. And this brings us to an absolutely crucial concept, operating capital. This is the cash, or let's be honest, usually the high-interest credit, that's required to purchase all this bulk inventory upfront, way before you've generated a single sale. So our stickman Steve, desperately wanting to scale up that tiny margin, just maxed out his credit card to buy a giant, heavy pallet of goods from Costco. Our sources explicitly warn against doing this, pointing out that risking operating capital on a bulk buy like this is incredibly dangerous. And why is it so dangerous? Well, because of what happens next. Welcome to the sales velocity trap. You see, the entire Amazon FBA arbitrage model relies on one massive assumption that your products are going to sell incredibly fast. The gurus promise that because you're tapping into Amazon's huge customer base, your items are just going to fly off those digital shelves. But what happens if they don't? What happens if competitors undercut your price or the trend just fizzles out? Let's walk through this sort of chronological funnel of failure. First, we have that initial euphoric bulk purchase at Costco, right? Swiping the credit card. Second, Steve pays to physically ship those heavy pallets all the way to an Amazon fulfillment center. Third, and this is the absolute critical failure point, the sales velocity stalls. Maybe other sellers found the exact same Costco deal and just completely flooded the market. Suddenly, Steve isn't selling 10 items a day. He's selling 0. Finally, all that inventory just sits there, completely unmoving on Amazon's shelves. And that brings us to
The death spiral. Aging inventory fees.
When that inventory sits unmoving, it wakes up this sort of invisible monster. Because remember, Amazon is a fulfillment center. It's not a long-term storage facility. And this timeline brilliantly illustrates the seller's total demise. Month 1, the pallet arrives at Amazon, everything's great, hopes are high. Month 3, sales have completely stalled out, and Amazon starts slapping him with monthly storage fees. Month 6, our stickman Steve is sweating bullets, staring at a ticking clock. Those monthly storage fees have completely devoured that tiny $4 profit margin. Month 9, Steve is officially upside down. Literally every single month that item sits there, he is actively losing money just to keep it in the warehouse. Visually demonstrating this math really drives the point home. Look at this. Your gross revenue is that initial $26 that looked so amazing. But your item cost plus the fixed FBA, pick, pack, and referral fees take up $22, leaving you with that tiny $4 sliver. Now add in those creeping, compounding, long-term storage fees. Mathematically, it completely eliminates whatever margin was left and actually starts eating directly into the operating capital Steve initially spent at Costco. He is completely trapped. Our source material actually addresses this nightmare scenario perfectly. They point out, quote, the velocity of sales is not working. So then you start to incur a fee because those products are sitting in an Amazon warehouse over time, and there is a fee for that, so there is a risk. Tying up your operating capital in slow-moving inventory isn't just a minor bump in the road. It's an active, bleeding wound to your finances. So to sum up this explainer, we really have to contrast the illusion versus the reality here. The illusion is that flashy guru math, right? Scanning an item, seeing a $17 difference, and believing you've found an absolute gold mine. But the reality? The reality is our stickman Steve, completely drowning in FBA aging inventory fees, realizing his true $4 profit has been entirely wiped out by storage costs just because the product didn't sell fast enough. Which brings us to our final thought for you to take away today. Before you go out and max out a credit card on a whole pallet of goods, you really have to ask yourself, are you willing to risk your operating capital against the ticking clock of Amazon's warehouse? Look, the retail arbitrage side hustle can absolutely work for some people, for sure. But if you don't carefully calculate the true fees, the actual margins, and the devastating cost of stalled sales velocity, well, you might just find yourself caught right in the middle of the death trap. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and be sure to look way beyond the surface-level numbers next time you see one of those get-rich-quick strategies online.